such a time as this.
And welcome back to For Such a Time as This. I am your host, Pastor James Pittman. I want to go over a story, a text, and then we're going to talk about these mega churches and the concept of mega churches. When recalling the story of Gideon, starting in the book of Judges, chapter 6, and then when you get to chapter 7, Gideon is now convinced he's going to obey the Lord. He's going to take on these Midianites. And you remember when he puts out a call, 32,000 men from all Israel gather. And then you remember the story. God keeps paring them down. God keeps paring them down. So at the end, you had about 300 men that went and routed. The estimates are about 120,000. 300, 120,000. The Lord just wipes them out. But the key verse in all of that, that reveals part of God's character is found in Judges 7:2. When God is talking to Gideon, he says this, the Lord says to Gideon, the people with you are too many. They're too many for me to give the Midianites into your hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying my own hand has saved me. Did you get that? Did you see God's personality? 32,000 men, 32,000, 120,000. Boy, the odds still aren't good, but that's too many. God's character when it comes to numbers, too many. Because you see, those odds are bad, but they're good enough that even if you win, you think that you would have saved your own self. So God pares it down to 300. No doubt, 300, 120,000, over 120,000. Clearly, that was a work of God. So you see God's personality when it comes to salvation, when it comes to doing things in the name of the Lord and numbers. Now, let's talk about this thing called the mega church. A lot of people think that somehow if you can gather a lot of people in a building on Sunday morning, that somehow God is doing a wonderful thing. God is moving. Obviously, the Spirit is here, or otherwise there wouldn't be so many people. Whether it's Gideon, you have too many. Whether it's Jonathan, the Lord is not restrained to save by many or by few. Do you remember that? Jonathan and the shield bearer climb up to the garrison and rout the garrison. 2 men. That's how God works. He loves to take the few to rout the many. And so many of people, we are in Chicago for such a time as this, is based in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And for those of you who don't know, we've had a rash of mega churches falling. And what I see going on is that many people, they leave the mega church, they see the problems of the mega church, and then you know what they start doing? They walk into a new church and they start looking for numbers. And the average mindset of the believer, at least in this area, is that they walk into a large church. The smile goes on and they say, is God here? But if you understand God, you walk into a building on Sunday morning with a lot of numbers, you should say, is God here? Understanding what God does and who he is and his view on numbers. I know a man who raised the dead, walked on water, fed 5,000 with 2 fish and a few loaves of bread, did miraculous things, rose from the dead, appeared to over 500 after he rose from the dead. But do you remember how many people were in that room on Pentecost? 120. That's all. Do you remember when Jesus was walking, he was talking about eating his flesh and drinking his blood? and more people started to melt away, did Jesus pull back? No, he went even harder. And it says many stopped following him. Jesus didn't care about the megachurch. He cared about truth and faithfulness. He didn't even console the apostles. Will you also now leave me? And their response, where will we go? That's God's view on numbers. And I think if believers, those who are truly Jesus's, look and understand the numbers, that's the devil's game. Faithfulness, that's God's game. So as you look at a church, don't look at the numbers. Don't look. Here's a hint. If you go to a building on Sunday morning and the words sin and repentance, judgment and salvation aren't used, find another building to go to on Sunday morning. But don't be fooled by the mega church. It's not how God works.
Such a time as